Today we're going to talk about binary form. Binary form is two-part form because bi means two, so it's two-part form. But before we look at it, let's learn a couple of new phrases and a couple of new words. If you see a phrase and it ends on a half cadence, or a form ends on a half cadence, or which is a two-chord or a five-chord, or if you modulate but you haven't confirmed the modulation by actually doing a phrase in that key, either way, that's called an open form because you have to go on. If you come to the end of the phrase and you have a perfect authentic cadence or some kind of one chord that ends it, that's called a closed phrase or closed form. Um, you'll hear those terms a lot, but they're really not very important. We also talked last time about an A and then another A where the first has a half cadence of some sort and the second has a authentic cadence of some sort. We call that whole structure a period. Well, the first phrase in that is called the antecedent, and the second is the consequent. And those are phrases you do need to know, antecedent and consequent. They're very, very common phrases. That's an AA form. So you think that that's a binary form, but actually, no, that's a period. It's an A form, so it's a single idea, but just with two different cadences. A binary form is an A and a B. Simple. The A can be just a phrase, B can be a phrase, or the A could be two phrases, like in a period, and the B could be two phrases or anything, but whatever they are, there's a recognizable unit we call A, and there's a recognizable unit we call B. And if A ends on a one chord, then this is a closed form, and if A ends on a five chord, it's open. Simple. AB, binary form. Straight ahead, as simple as can be. Now, why is this important? And then we're going to talk about repeats, which makes it interesting. Back before the symphony and the string quartet, most instrumental music were dance suites. So you would have different dances. They would have a sarabande, would be a slow dance, and a jig, and a minuet, and a courante, and an allemande. Many of these dances don't exist today. Some of them, like the jig and the minuet, do. But they were mostly in some version of binary form. We're going to talk about that later. You had to have a certain number of dance steps. You know, if you're going to do a dance, you can't have a 10 measure phrase and a 17 measure phrase. People would trip. So these were 8 or 16 or 32 measure phrases, and then you'd have one set of themes and another set of themes, and together that would make a whole dance. And then you'd have a suite of dances so that people could dance a lot. And many of the pieces we think of as orchestral pieces, like the Handel Water music, are actually dance suites. And so this form becomes very common, and it even finds its way into symphonies. We'll show that at the third or fourth lecture on form. So this is a very important idea, this binary form. It repeats over and over because it works. And it particularly worked for dance forms. So early or late Baroque, we see it like this. This will change as we hit the classical era, but often looks at it, except that's too short. So then what composers did is this. They put repeats in there, make it longer. And when you put a repeat, this is called a reprise. So when you have two repeats, we call it a two reprise binary form. Two reprise, because there are two reprises. That's all. That's the real classic dance form before we get into rounded binary, which we're going to talk about in a couple of lectures. In the early days, this repeat was missing. And the book says that that's called bar form. I always think of that as single reprise, binary form, but it's bar form, and that's a type where you have the A plays twice, but B only plays once. But by the time we get to dance forms, we almost always have this form, which is binary form, but two reprise, binary form. Two ideas, each one reprised. Done. That's all you need to know about binary form. Ternary form next.